The theater experience is so unique because I think it creates a shared experience and community in a way that other events don't. I mean, from an audience perspective, just being in a dark room with other people and sharing the journey of the characters with the people sitting next to you is just an experience like no other. And then just being on stage as a performer and knowing that you really, really I mean, that is the epitome of living from moment to moment, of being present because you never know what's going to happen. And it's a very vulnerable experience, sharing yourself in the moment with the audience. And so in that sense, I think it creates a very unique sense of community. I've heard of Breath of Fire for years. So my father is Ron Gonzales. He's a former journalist with the Orange County Register. And he was the one that introduced me to Breath of Fire. I'm really lucky that my parents have been extremely supportive of my theater career. When I was a kid, they thought it was really important for me, to not only pursue this passion, but to see artists that reflected my experience. And so they took me to Casa 101 to see the plays of Josefina Lopez. I remember I saw the workshop production of Electricidad at South Coast Repertory Theater. My dad introduced me to Breath of Fire. And I think what really drew me to all of these artists is not only did they reflect my cultural experience, but they were artists that didn't see themselves reflected in mainstream theater. And so they created their own opportunities. They created their own stories. They took ownership of those stories because they weren't being told in the traditional theater canon. And that really, really inspired me. I saw those artists and I thought, that's the theater artist that I want to be. I want to be that theater artist. I want to create those kinds of opportunities for other artists as well. And so when I thought about who I wanted to collaborate with for Olvidados, those values were really, really important to me because those are cornerstones that I've really held on to in my own work. This is a piece about 4 very strong women. And so it was important for me to find a director that shared that identity. I immediately thought of Sara Guerrero as sort of my dream director. I thought this would be a fantastic project for Breath of Fire. And I very nervously reached out to them a few months ago. You just never know if a project is going to be the right fit for a particular director or a theater group. But I was really lucky that Sara was very enthusiastic, and so was Breath of Fire. So Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido, is inspired by my family's own story. So in 1931, my grandmother, Elisa Gonzales, she was 8 years old, an American citizen. She was born in San Pedro, California. There was a huge repatriation effort happening in the United States. Local city agencies were trying to essentially find a scapegoat for what was happening with the Great Depression. There was a campaign saying that Mexicans were taking jobs away from real Americans, that they were taking up space on relief rolls. So there was an effort to deport and manipulate Mexicans and Mexican Americans into leaving the country. My great grandmother Paula was a Mexican national, and they repatriated to Mexico in 1931. And so the story is very much inspired by my own family story. And I really felt the need to tell this story 2 years ago, right before my grandmother, we called her Sally. They, back in those times, they Americanized Spanish names. And so they turned Celia into Sally, and it kept. So she's Grandma Sally to me. But 2 years ago, she was very ill, and we knew that she wasn't going to make it through the year. And I just wanted to tell her story. I knew that she had been through this experience. My grandmother was an incredible person, and I just want to share how incredible she was with the rest of the world through this story. And so right before she passed, I started writing bits and pieces of the story of what I knew about her experience in the repatriation. Unfortunately, around the time that she died, she had Alzheimer's. And so a lot of this she didn't remember herself. And then since she passed in August of 2019, I've been continuing to write little bits and pieces. And then COVID sort of gave me the downtime that I needed to really focus on what is important to me as a theater artist, as a storyteller. And I just started really leaning into the story, doing more research, talking to my family, writing more of the story. And then just what has been happening politically in this country with the immigration crisis at the border, the way that we've seen these horrible family separation policies. I mean, the repatriation and what's happening now, that is history repeating itself. We're not learning anything. You know, in 1931, there was this whole this whole environment of mongering and racism against Mexicans, and that hasn't stopped. And I truly believe that theater can be a vehicle for change. You know, we can share stories that haven't been told. This is a part of history that's not taught in the school system. It's been completely swept under the rug. I mean, there's scholarship written on it, academic books, but it's not being taught. So it's part of history that even a lot of Mexican Americans don't know about. I mean, my colleagues at the University of Massachusetts don't know about this story. You know, a lot of people have attempted to write it, but I just think it's not only to tell my family's story, but to share this really important part of American history that just isn't included in the mainstream narrative. Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido, centers on the story of my grandmother, Elisa Gonzales, as an 8-year-old American child, and my great-grandmother, Paula Valdivia, who were both repatriated to Jalisco, Mexico in 1931. We see Paula's journey unfold in Mexico as a young 23-year-old woman who is excited about prospects in a new country, in the United States. My great-grandfather, Jose, is sort of a secondary character that we see in the background who has been working on the American railroads, and he sort of peddles the hope of the American dream to my great-grandmother. They never expect to stay in the country. She ends up staying in the United States for 8 years, has children, and is very disenchanted by what she experiences, a lot of it because of the way Mexicans are treated. So we really see the repatriation through these two different perspectives, through my great-grandmother, who was an immigrant, through the eyes of a child, my great-grandmother Celia. And then we also see the play unfold through the eyes of the corridista, who is sort of the play's musical narrator. We see a bird's eye view of the repatriation. She provides a lot of humorous commentary and historical context as well. So the play, sort of umbrellas the many stories of the repatriation, but it focuses in on the stories of my family. So Sara Guerrero, the director, the artistic director at Breath of Fire, and Moises Vázquez, who is the play's musical composer, have both been absolutely instrumental in this collaboration. So what we're working on right now is revisions on the first draft. So it's absolutely a play in development. It's an press, which is really, really exciting because we're seeing it go through a lot of different changes. Sara is a visionary. She is just so creative. She's been reading the different versions of the script that I've been sending her, and she's been encouraging me to look at it in different ways. Like, hey, I think that this one could work really well as a song, or, we need more of for example, we need more magic in this particular section. And so she's just been really, really great. I mean, she's a performer and a director. And again, we have that shared cultural identity. So she's been very, very helpful in terms of helping me look at the script in different ways, looking at the characters in different ways. And Moises is, I feel like Moises is the heart and soul of this production. When I wrote this play, of course, it's called A Mexican American Corrido. And so when you hear the title, you know that music is going to be involved. A corrido is a traditional Mexican folk song. It's oral history set to music. And so I knew that I needed a musical composer for this play. And Sara's been working with Moises for years. And Moises has been writing the music for the play. A couple of weeks ago, we were working on the music, and it was just absolutely incredible to see how quickly he was working. Had all the lyrics to the songs written, and he just would ask me questions about what I meant, what the sentiment of the song was. And he just immediately knew what music the lyrics needed to be set to. And of course, we're still working on reworking a lot of this. There's more songs to be written. Moises has helped me rewrite some of the lyrics so they fit better with the music. But it's been an absolute joy to work with both of them. There's obviously going to be more revisions in the future, and they've just been so great at helping me reimagine the life of this play. When the audience sees this play for the first time, I think the first thing I want them to walk away with is just the extent of history that isn't included in the mainstream narrative. So for example, the repatriation isn't taught in schools. And so I hope that they learn something about history that's not their own, about their own history. And then I also hope that the audience can walk away with the sense that we are all storytellers. Whether or not you're a theater artist, that we all have the capacity to share stories, that we all have stories in our own families that can be told. And so I just hope that it encourages people to ask questions. I think that's one of the biggest regrets that I have in life, is that when my grandparents were around, I just kind of took them for granted. Like, your grandparents are these super special people in your life, and they cook all your favorite foods and you love being with them, but do you really ask them the important questions? Because I think our personal histories are so important to understand and to know and to keep. And so I really, really wish that I had asked my grandparents more questions when they were around, because I think their stories are absolutely part of American history. They deserve to be told and shared. And so I hope that the audience walks away with maybe a sense of urgency. Like, I should be asking my family members questions. I should be finding a way to write these stories down, to record them, to find pictures. I mean, whatever it is, there's so many different ways of telling stories. And so I hope that the audience members are inspired to ask those questions and to share stories. So a few months ago, when I really decided that I wanted to produce Olvidados, I knew that I needed to find an amazing team to collaborate with. So I reached out to Sara and Breath of Fire to see if they would be interested in collaborating with me. Sara enthusiastically said yes. And from there, the bits and pieces came together. I talked to my department. I had to submit a proposal to have the play included in our main stage season, and it was accepted. I applied for a very prestigious grant through UMass called the Faculty Research Grant, and I got a very generous grant from the university to support this production. And so we're calling it a partnership because we are exchanging our artistry with one another. I was able to lead a workshop online for some of their amazing artists. We're collaborating with the Breath of Fire artists. We're doing a lot of the script development here in California. And then in the spring, in April, Sara and Moises are going to be flying out to Massachusetts for the workshop production. And Sara will be teaching a workshop to my students. So we have a residency exchange happening. And then we're going to be doing the workshop production as a one-woman show with me playing all 4 parts. We're going to have live music. And then again, this will be an opportunity for us to get more feedback from the audience in terms of where we think the play needs to go. And then we hope to have a Southern California world premiere of the full production sometime in summer 2022. And so we're really using the resources of both the university and Breath of Fire to bring this story to life. And it's exciting because we're seeing different possibilities for the play. So the way that we're doing the reading here is that 4 Breath of Fire actresses are reading all 4 parts, even though at UMass I'm going to be playing all 4 parts. And that was really so I'd be able to have my playwright hat on and hear the play and not have to worry about performing. And in that process, we discovered that it is actually a really amazing play for 4 women. You know, it's really important for me for this production to have a life after its UMass production, after its Breath of Fire production, because I think, again, it's so important for the stories of the repatriation to be known. And so I think, you know, it's a great play for a single performer, and it's a great play for an ensemble. And so I just think there's a lot of possibilities for that this partnership is allowing us to explore. More voices need to be heard in the theater world, because as I keep saying, there are so many stories that need to be shared. I mean, when we look at the United States, we're such a diverse country. We are a story of people of all kinds of backgrounds, immigrants, and again, so many of these stories, you know, for so long we've been focusing on a certain perspective, on a certain narrative, but I think it's high past the time that we tell stories in theater that reflect our own communities, our local communities, our state communities, the communities in our home countries. And I think people are hungry for that. You know, we're tired of seeing the same thing. We want to see stories on stage that challenge us. We want to see stories on stage that bring us joy. We want to see stories on stage that encourage comfortable conversations so that we're able to move forward as a society. And so I really see just in my own circles, in my own communities, that people are really pushing for change. And I am hopeful that it's actually going to happen this time. I think it's the playwriting classes, the creative classes that Breath of Fire offers to the community are so important, because I think that it fosters lean into what it is to be a storyteller. I think Breath of Fire, just in their life as a theater company, has been modeling what it is to create your own work, to tell your own stories. And I think it's really important to offer that kind of mentorship to the artists in our communities, because we don't always get that mentorship. It can be hard to find, and I think Breath of Fire does a fantastic job of offering that to the community. I mean, we need leaders, we need seasoned artists to reach out and share their talents, foster the next storytellers. I think that other playwrights and other artists should absolutely get involved with Breath of Fire, because they're just an amazing organization. They have so much enthusiasm, true passion for the work that they do. They have, they're actually working in the community, which I think is amazing, connecting the arts to community work. And it's just great to work with a group of artists that believe in what you have to bring to the table. You know, I'm kind of an outsider to Breath of Fire. You know, I've been familiar with their work, but I've been living in another state and I don't know them that well. And I was welcomed with open arms. They were really excited about my project, about supporting it. And we don't always get that as theater artists. Sometimes we get closed doors, or sometimes there's a lot of gatekeeping, or sometimes you have to have a certain level of experience to even have your work considered. And that was not the case for me with Breath of Fire, and they're just so supportive. And so I think that if you are an actor who wants to work on your acting chops, they support so much wonderful new work. That's a great way to get involved. Another great way to get involved is taking their workshops. If you have a passion for writing or a passion for sharing your own stories, I think their workshops are a great way to foster that and to learn from other amazing artists that are actually doing that work. And so I think whatever aspect of theater you do, Breath of Fire is an incredible theater organization to be a part of. And I think that it's a great place to find a home in. Theater companies like Breath of Fire are crucial to our communities. As I said before, I think that they are doing really important work, not just producing amazing theater, but supporting their local community, being involved with the local community, getting the local community involved in the arts. I think that the work that they're doing shows how important the arts are, not just to artists, but to communities. Not everybody can afford to go see a Broadway production or, a professional production in Los Angeles. And so I think that they're telling really amazing stories and making it accessible to community. And I think it's important to support these organizations, not only for that, but again, we're coming out of COVID. We're coming out of a year of not having any live performance or theater. Of course, we've all been very creative about that, and we've been doing amazing, important, wonderful work on Zoom. But I think it's really important to support theater companies like Breath of Fire as they're transitioning back into live performance, as they're transitioning into, what is theater post-COVID? What does that look like? What does it feel like? What are the stories that we're committed to telling? And so I think that it's important to support theater companies like Breath of Fire as they navigate what theater looks like in the post-COVID world. My name is Elisa Gonzales. I'm the playwright of Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido. To learn more about Breath of Fire and the development of Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido, please visit Breath of Fire's website. Thank you so much.